Hello, purpose-driven career leaders. My name is Kori Burkholder, founder of Purpose-Driven Career Accelerator program. And today I am excited to connect with Sydney, who was part of the program. She finished about a few months ago, and I wanted to connect with her today to find out any updates and how her new job is going and everything that she wants to share. So without further ado, I would like to, turn it over to you, Sydney. And,
Hi.
tell us where you're calling in from, more importantly.
Sure. I'm calling in from my home office,
Excellent. Home office in New York, New
New
Jersey.
York City.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have a lot of people that are, all over the country, but many people are on the East Coast, which is awesome. Yeah, so we wanted to kind of dive into your career journey. We started working together about 6 or 7 months ago, something
Mhm.
like that. Okay,
Yep.
great. And so I'm curious what you were struggling with when you reached out for support.
Yeah, I felt that I was in a point in my career where I was really unhappy in the current job that I was in, but also had a lot of questions about what my future looked like, if I was on the right career path, if I wanted to make a complete change, and was feeling really sort of overwhelmed by all of the paths that I could take, while also just not even knowing sort of how to take the first step and what that first step even looked like.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were struggling, and this is a lot of people that come in is I have so many ideas. I have a lot of talents and skills, and I could go in a gazillion different ways. And so when you have those too many ideas, it's like confusing. It's like, which path am I going to go down? What skill set do I really enjoy using? Kind of things like that. Yeah, so that's where you were. So when you reached out and we had that initial conversation, what were your biggest concerns about joining this process?
Yeah, I had never worked with a career coach before, so I just had a lot of questions about sort of what the process looked like, what the time commitment was. And it's one of those things where when you are really sort of like lost in your career, and are unsure of what the next step looks like, it feels really scary because you're already bogged down by your current role and the stresses of life and your profession, and so this was a big sort of undertaking, and a big journey to sort of begin, but it feels incredibly overwhelming. And it's something that, I didn't feel like I could do alone. And so, I was just really curious and excited to find out what the assistance would look like, in sort of starting this journey.
Yeah. So how did you overcome some of those, overwhelmed feelings in terms of like making that decision to work together?
I mean, I think I sort of had to let go of expectations, and I had to let go of the sort of desire to need to know all of the answers right away.
Mhm.
And it was a little bit of a raw experience to start because I was in sort of such a negative space in my life and career journey at the time. And so I just, had to sort of show up at where I was and be really open to the process and open to learn. And I'll say, as soon as I started, sort of all of like any fear and apprehension melted away because I felt very supported and very guided, and that there was like a very tangible framework. Um, so I didn't feel like I was, sort of navigating alone in any way.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you also had a very demanding job as well. So time was an issue as well, or an obstacle, right? Because you were working a lot of hours. So I give you credit in terms of, really carving out that time to dedicate to this process.
Yeah, and I'll say I mean that is one thing that immediately I was drawn to with your process, Kori, is that you were incredibly flexible and accommodating to my schedule. I felt like all of the time that we spent was maximized, whether it was like one-on-one coaching sessions or the group, counseling sessions. I felt like the time was there for me when I needed it. But I also could work at my own pace and within the framework of, my very wacky schedule.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what was, a key moment working through that initial exploration process for you that was like that aha moment? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think, yes, I do. I mean, to back up a little bit, I think, I graduated from college in 2016. And I think sort of when I was entering the workforce, there was just this sort of feeling around me and my colleagues and the people that I went to school with, that you just had to like succeed, 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 always be working for the biggest and best companies, always be, like constantly getting promotions, constantly striving for sort of like what looked best on your resume, or what was sort of like the most impressive career path. And that just became very ingrained in me into like as my career progressed. And I was really fortunate to work at really amazing places with really amazing people. But, I was so unhappy when I started this career coaching journey because what I was doing was not synced up with like my values and what I actually cared about at the end of the day. And I think when I started coaching, I was so desperate to sort of like find a new job and just get out of where I was and to be happier. But what was so critical was sort of taking a step back and really spending time identifying what my values were, and what I valued both in a professional setting and in my life. And I really feel like as soon as I unlocked what that was, I could see the potential and the value and the merit in doing something that is very aligned with my values and
Mhm.
not just what others sort of expected of me or thought was great. And it turns out you can have all of that. It turns out you can have a really fulfilling and really exciting career while also doing something that is really in line, like aligned with my morals and my values, and that is very nourishing for me. And so that was the moment sort of in this journey when I unlocked the values that it really brought into focus what I wanted to do next.
And that's very early on in the process too, which we'll get
Yeah.
to, because it was almost a record breaker in terms of getting the clarity and making that bridge. But yeah, you bring up such a good point of the values. It's so important to understand that in yourself and how that applies to your life and career, because so often our parents' values are instilled in us, or teachers or professor or whoever it is, or your friends in college. You kind of get mixed up with other people's values, right? And so you get to this place in your career and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, like whose life am I living?
Mhm.
Right? So like that's very important. So yeah, so values was definitely an aha moment. And so take us through that next process, because like I said, Sydney's story is so inspiring. She got clarity really quickly, and yeah, tell us those next steps.
Yeah, I mean, I once I had sort of identified what my values were, it was really easy for me to sort of identify how that translated into a job description or in interviews. I was able to really ask the right questions for the first time in my entire career. I had changed jobs 4 times since I had sort of entered the workforce. And reflecting back, every time I had always been asking the wrong questions. I had always been prioritizing the wrong things. And so, it was once I had identified my values, I could very clearly see what was lacking in my current role and what I needed out of a new position, whatever that was, whether it was going to be in a sort of a similar industry or job role, or completely outside of that. And so, pretty quickly into starting my coaching process, I was approached by a company with about a role that seemed really interesting to me, but was very different than sort of what I was doing. I was working inside of a big news organization. This was inside of a tech and entertainment company. And I felt very sort of informed and grounded as I started this interview process for this new role, because I was asking the right questions, and I was, really approaching each conversation from a place of looking out for myself, which I hadn't done before. So that was really, really encouraging. And I felt very supported as I was going through this process. And certainly, it wasn't just, I wasn't just approaching each interview with everything I learned. I also was then able to go back to you, Kori, and ask questions and ask for guidance and clarity throughout. And it was a very sort of collaborative process, which was also new to me, as someone who had interviewed many times. It was really unique having someone sort of in my corner consulting me throughout the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that was amazing. And so what's it like now? So you've been in the new role for how many months?
Oh gosh, I've been there for about 4.5, 5 months. I I wake up every morning, um, dare I say, excited to start
Yes.
work. I mean, and listen, I love a weekend. I love I love my time off, but there is something really wonderful about feeling like I am challenged and I'm learning and I'm growing in a new role without being stretched too thin, without learning and growing from a place of fear. I'm learning and growing from a place of curiosity. Um, I I find that this new role really aligns with what I want to do. It's really hitting at sort of like my own professional desires and goals. And I also feel really strong and determined in who I am as a professional, and who I am as a human. I show up as my most authentic self every day. I stand my ground, and I feel confident in doing that. I feel confident in asserting my skills and my expertise in the workplace. And I credited a lot to my new employer and my team, who, it's just a wonderful place to work. But I also think a lot of it has to do with my own work and sort of how I set myself up for success in this new position. And I'm really putting myself first, which I haven't done ever in my career.
Yeah, it's such a contrast between where you were like 6 months ago as opposed to
Yeah.
now. And I can just see like your energy, you have excitement and you're lighter and happier. which always makes me happy to see that. So was there anything else that was surprising that you got out of this process that you weren't necessarily expecting?
I mean, I think I something that I really, really appreciated and I still think about is sort of all of the ideating on different career paths.
Mm,
I so appreciated the process of adding all of these ideas to like this bank that I now have. I certainly feel very satisfied and steady where I am now. But I also, am not, my door is not closed to one day completely switching career paths, to
mm,
completely exploring a new profession, to sort of keeping those curiosities on the back burner. That's really exciting for me because I think in previous roles, there is this sort of doom and gloom that can wash over, that did wash over me at many times, being like, I can't do this for the rest of my life.
right,
And I don't think that even in this role that I love and that is, really great for my life, that gives me a ton of work-life balance, that pays me, a really like adequate amount, it's, even though this job is amazing and it's great, I also don't feel limited. I feel like I could do this for another year, I could do this for another 10 years,
right,
but there's a whole life ahead of me. And having identified my own values and also understanding that these can be flexible and they'll sort of expand and contract and change and evolve as my life
right.
does, I feel excited for sort of like the limitless possibilities later in my life. And I know that might sound cliche to some people. I certainly felt like that was a very cliche idea when I was in a place of despair. But now that I'm in a place of health and wealth and joy, um, it's the possibilities are very exciting. So that is just one thing. I think when I went into this journey, it felt like it could just be sort of like a temporary solution, but it actually has really set me up for long-term success.
Thank you for sharing that. And that blueprint is there for the rest of your life. I tell you, like
Ah,
people come to me 7 years later and they're like, I, was at a crossroads again. And they went back to that and it really helped them clarify and ask the right questions, of themselves. So, your journey is so inspiring. And what would you say to somebody who is on the fence, who needs help, but is just, I don't, on the fence? Should I do it? Should I not do it? What would you tell them?
um, there are so many things in life that we cannot do alone, and we shouldn't be expected to do it alone. And this is one of them. For a lot of people, myself included, the majority of my week, the majority of my hours are spent working and making a living. And so it's really important to be doing something that you love and to get to a place of um peace and happiness and growth. And so for a long time, I felt like my career was sort of solely up to me and I was alone in navigating it. And, the resources that I was getting for my employer were going to have to cut it.
Mm,
And, the same way, if you weren't feeling well, you wouldn't just say, I'm just gonna ride this out by myself and I'm gonna figure out how to diagnose myself and I'm gonna figure out the next steps to like being well. No, you go to a doctor and or take the necessary steps to be well. Um, don't you don't have to do this journey alone. And I I'm so glad I invested in myself and invested in this, to help me get the clarity that I would never have been able to find on my own.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for trusting me as your coach. It was just an honor to work with you through that process and just see you move through it and have that success and find that happiness and that joy in yourself and in your career. So thank you. And if Sydney's journey is resonating with you, or if you feel lost, stuck, and confused about what it is that you want to do next, I am here for your support. Please reach out to me, KoriBurkholder.com. Book a free 15-minute brainstorming session where we can really map out your 90-day game plan and get you moving in the right direction. And that's it from us. Thank you for listening, and see you soon.